Okay, good morning. We're back with 2 Kings chapter 13. Jehoahaz rules in Israel. Jehoahaz, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, son of Jehu, began to rule over Israel in the 23rd year of King Joash's reign in Judea. He reigned in Samaria 17 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He followed the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, continuing the sins of adultery that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led to Israel to commit. So the Lord was very angry with Israel, and he allowed King Hazael of Aram and his son Ben-Hadad to defeat them time after time. Then Jehoahaz prayed for the Lord's help, and the Lord heard his prayer. The Lord could see how terribly the king of Aram was oppressing Israel. So the Lord raised up the deliverer to rescue the Israelites from the tyranny of the Arameans. Then Israel lived in safety again as they had in former days, but they continued to sin, following the evil example of Jeroboam. They even set up an Asherah pole in Samaria. Finally, Jehoahaz's army was reduced to 50 mounted troops, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had killed the others like they were dust under his feet. The rest of the events in Jehoahaz's reign and all his deeds, including the extent of his power, are recorded in the book of the history of kings of Israel. When Jehoahaz died, he was buried in Samaria with his ancestors. Then his son Jehoash became the next king. Jehoash rules in Israel. Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, began to rule over Israel in the 37th year of King Joash's reign in Judea. He reigned in Samaria 16 years. But he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to turn from the sins of idolatry that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to commit. The rest of the events in Joash's reign and all his deeds, including the extent of his power and his war with King Amaziah of Judea, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jehoash died, he was buried with his ancestors in Samaria. Then his son Jeroboam II became the next king. Elisha's final prophecy. When Elisha was in his last illness, King Jehoash of Israel visited him and wept over him. My father, the chariots and charioteers of Israel, he cried. Elisha told him, get a bow and some arrows, and the king did as he was told. Then Elisha told the king of Israel to put his hand on the bow, and Elisha laid his own hands on the king's hands. Then he commanded, open the eastern window. He opened it, and then he said, shoot. So he did. Then Elisha proclaimed, this is the Lord's arrow, full of victory over Aram, for you will completely conquer the Arameans at Epic. Now pick up the other arrows and strike them against the ground. So the Lord So the king picked them up and struck the ground 3 times. But the man of God was angry with him. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, he exclaimed. Then you would have beaten Aramean until they were entirely destroyed. Now you will be victorious only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Groups of Moabite raiders used to invade the land each spring. Once, when the Israelites were burying a man, they spied a band of these raiders, so they hastily threw the body they were burying into the tomb of Elisha. But as soon as the body touched Elisha's bones, the dead man revived and jumped to his feet. King Hazael of Aram had oppressed Israel during the entire reign of King Jehoahaz, but the Lord was gracious to the people of Israel, and they were not totally destroyed. He pitied them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to this day, he still has not completely destroyed them or banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became the next king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, raptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns of Hazael had taken from Jehoash's father Jehoahaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad on 3 occasions, and so he recovered the Israelite towns. 2 Kings chapter 14. Amaziah rules in Judea. Amaziah, son of Joash, began to rule over Judea in the 2nd year of the King Jehoash of Israel. Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother was Jehoaddan from Jerusalem. Amaziah did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, but not like his ancestor David. Instead, he followed the example of his father Joash. Amaziah did not destroy the pagan shrines where the people offered sacrifices and burned incense. When Amaziah was well established as king, he executed the men who had assassinated his father. However, he did not kill the children of the assassins, for he obeyed the command of the Lord written in the book of the laws of Moses. Parents must not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor the children for the sins of their parents. Those worthy of the death must be executed for their own crimes. It was Amaziah who killed 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. He also conquered Selah and changed his name to Joktil, as it is called to this day. One day, Amaziah sent this challenge to Israel's king Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz and grandson of Judah. Come and meet me in battle. But King Joash of Israel replied to King Amaziah of Judea with this story: Out in the Lebanon mountains, a thistle sent a message to the mighty cedar tree. Give your daughter in marriage to my son. But just then a wild animal came by and stepped on the thistle, crushing it. You have indeed destroyed Edom and are very proud of it, but content with your victory and stay home. Why stir up trouble that will bring disaster on you and the people of Judea? But Amaziah refused to listen to King Jehoash of Israel and mobilized his army against King Amaziah of Judea. The two armies drew up their battle lines at Beth Shemesh in Judea. Judea was routed by the army of Israel, and his army scattered and fled for home. King Joash of Israel captured King Amaziah of Judea at Beth Shemesh and marched on to Jerusalem. Then Joash ordered his army to demolish 600 feet of Jerusalem's wall from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. He carried off all the gold and silver and all the utensils from the temple of the Lord, as well as the palace from the palace treasury. He also took hostages and returned to Samaria. The rest of the events in Joash's reign, including the extent of his power and his war with King Amaziah of Judea, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Joash died, he was buried with the ancestors in Samaria. Then his son Jeroboam II became the next king. King Amaziah of Judea lived on for 15 years after the death of King Joash of Israel. The rest of the events of Amaziah's reign are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judea. There are conspiracy against Amaziah's life in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But his enemies sent assassins after him, and they killed him there. They brought him back to Jerusalem on a horse. He was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. The people of Judea then crowned Amaziah's 13-year-old son, Uzzah, as their next king. After his father's death, Uzziah rebuilt the town of Elath and restored it to Judea. Jeroboam II rules in Israel. Jeroboam II, the son of Joash, began to rule over Israel in the 15th year of King Amaziah's rule in Judea. Jeroboam reigned in Samaria 41 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to turn from the sins of adultery that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to commit. Jeroboam II recovered the territories of Israel between Lebo Hamath and the Dead Sea, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had promised through Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath Hefer. For the Lord saw the bitter suffering of the people of Israel and how they had absolutely no one to help them. And because the Lord had said he would not blot out the name of Israel completely, he used Jeroboam II, the son of Joash, to save them. The rest of the events in the reign of Jeroboam II and all his deeds, including the extent of his power, his wars, and how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judea, are recorded in the book of history of the kings of Israel. When Jeroboam II died, he was buried with his ancestors, the kings of Israel. Then his son Zechariah became the next king. Okay, and with that, I'll be back later with chapter 15.